Here's how to work with the restlessness. Acknowledge it, let it spread and open. Here are ways to work with your doubt, the doubting mind. I can't do this, it's too hard. I can't do the cancer, I can't help with this person. I can't. Instead, you recognize it and you say, oh, doubting mind. We all have the doubting mind. If you get in it, you suffer a lot. But if you simply acknowledge it, oh, this is the doubting mind, you become the loving witness to it, and there comes a sense of ease and freedom.
Whether you're a patient, survivor, or caregiver, you don't have to walk the cancer journey alone. Let's leave the past behind and come into this present moment together to be educated, inspired, and enlightened. This is Mind, Body, Spirit, Cancer. Welcome to Mind, Body, Spirit, Cancer, a new podcast presented by the American Cancer Society. I'm your host, Pat Croce, and this week we have a special episode devoted to the therapeutic arts of mindfulness and meditation. To act as our guide on how these amazing complementary healing tools can be used by everyone in our audience, we have one of the pioneers responsible for modernizing these ancient Eastern practices and introducing them to our Western culture. He's been teaching meditation internationally for over 50 years and is the co-founder of both the Insight Meditation Society and Spirit Rock Center. He holds a PhD in clinical psychology and is a celebrated best-selling author whose books have been translated and read all over the world. I love his books. He's a grandfather, activist, and one of my spiritual role models. Please welcome Jack Kornfield.
Thank you, Pat. I'm very, very glad to join with you, but even more importantly, to join to you, those of you who are listening. This is a really important initiative that you started with the Cancer Society, and bravo.
Thank you. Jack, it's my honor and privilege to have you. And before we get started, I love to start the show with just a moment of stillness. And of all my guests that I've had over the past year, and now all the ones that are scheduled, you, above all of them, know the power of our still presence. So I just like everyone in our audience, just to rest lovingly and gently your attention on the sound of this Tibetan bell. And you can leave your baggage at the door and come in and join Jack and I for some sacred space where we're in the present moment together. And Jack, before I ask you any questions, you would not remember me, but I came to see you in November of 2016 at the Open Your Heart and Paradise retreat, Ram Dass's retreat in Maui, my wife and I. And it was you with Ram Dass and your wife, Trudy, and Sharon Salzberg. And it was just a wonderful, loving experience. And I got to go up to Ram Dass and say, Ram, you cracked my mind, and I just want to thank you. So, I mean, I had two of my spiritual heroes there, and I just want to say, it's so good to see you again. Right? Like,
yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I used to, of course, go around and as a colleague and friend with Ram Dass and teach, and streams of people would come up since his bestseller Be Here Now back at the 1970 or whenever it was, and say, Ram Dass, you changed my life. You reminded me that there was something so much bigger than the work that I do or the things that I learned to take care of and do, that I'm so much bigger than that, and you opened the door for me. And I think we're all looking for that. We live in a society that keeps us very busy, whether it's on our devices or our work or the demands. And somehow to have ways to come back to our own heart, to open our eyes when we walk down the street or take a walk in nature and sense our connection with something bigger, with the mystery of life. soothes the heart no matter what's going on, whether you've got cancer or whether you're, you know, well in your body for this time. There's something so nourishing. And so for you, Pat, to host this and invite people into a space of presence is a really beautiful gift. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Would you describe, you just said the word presence, and you're the guru of mindfulness in my world. Would you describe some words for our audience that aren't used to hearing this vocabulary?
I'm happy to, and I also want to use a language that's completely ordinary because there isn't some highfalutin spiritual thing that we have to do. Instead, we can notice in our human lives, in the way we're living, that we can either be lost in our thought. You're walking down the street, but you're worried about the next appointment, who you're taking care of, and what's going on in your life. And you miss the faces of the people passing by. You miss the sunlight at the end of the day reflecting the, the beautiful pastel colors in the puddles from the rainstorm. You miss where you are. And so the most important thing to start with in presence is just to drop into the current moment, not our thoughts of past and future, and open our eyes and our heart with a loving awareness. And loving awareness is another word for mindfulness. It means being present for our body, for the person in front of us, for the task we're doing with attention and kindness.
Now, I have to say that between you and Ram Dass, I suggest to people having 3-word mantras to take them out of their voice in the head and into the present moment. And one of which I am loving awareness is from you and Ram Dass to me. That's what I use most. That's all I'm loving awareness. And it was that loving part that added such a dimension that you talked about opening the heart. And how do you help people do that?
So, this is a really tender and powerful question. Um, because if we live from a place of care and love, the people around us feel it. The work we do comes from our best self, our best inspiration. So things that help living from the heart or opening the heart are unique to you who are listening. For some, it's listening to pieces of music that tenderize you. For some, it's taking walks in nature. For some, it might be some simple meditation practices where you receive some teachings, even the ones as simple as and powerful as what you just said, Pat. I am loving awareness. And instead of being all your thoughts and worries, I am the loving witness. I am the awareness itself that's hearing these words, that's seeing these faces on the screen. Take a few deep breaths, settle yourself, and begin to become present with kindness. May I touch what's present with, with a sensibility of tenderness and kindness, and all the rest of what happens in your life can change.
Jack, have you felt through your experience that people understand your words and point to the experience that you're trying to describe?
Well, they do. One of the things that's true for me and what's helped me, and again, walking in nature and practicing a loving kindness meditation, which we'll get to later on, how one can repeat, just as I'm loving awareness, you can also repeat thoughts and feelings of love to people you care about. May you be safe. May you be held in love. May you be protected. All of those things help more than anything. We have to listen to that, to take the silence and the space, even a few minutes in the middle of our busyness, and tune in to ourselves and say, what's my best intention? What's my highest intention for this moment, for this day? And if you quiet yourself and ask, even in the midst of difficulty, the heart will answer.
Mm.
It's an intuitive and very natural listening.
Oh, beautiful. And you talked about mindfulness being loving awareness. What's the relationship between mindfulness, presence, loving awareness, and meditation?
So the first three, mindfulness, loving awareness, presence, are synonyms. Being able to be present where we are, um, with a kind attention. So we're not caught up and we're not judging and fighting. We're just actually present with love and kindness and seeing clearly. And some things will be painful and some will be difficult and some will be easy and some will evoke a sense of joy. Some will have sadness. And it's almost like we can get bigger than what's presenting itself, or we can step back and be the space of the wide heart that says, yes, this is all part of being a human being. This is all part of what it means to be present. Now I started to answer your question, but I got a little bit off track. So repeat the question again.
You talked about presence and loving awareness relative to mindfulness. What's the correlation between mindfulness and meditation?
Yeah, thank you. Great. Um, Meditation is a very broad word, which basically means some form of inner attention. And there's 50 kinds. You can recite a prayer, you can have a mantra, I am loving awareness, you can have an image of a candle flame or of someone that you love, or a spiritual image of Mother Mary, or Jesus or Buddha or whoever inspires you. There are many kinds. Meditation means directing our attention from the outer world, taking a pause, quieting, and using one of many meditation techniques or tools to quiet the mind, to tune in, and to tend the heart. Tend the body as well with kindness.
And your meditative techniques, we talked about Ram Dass earlier, who I think he was from the origin of Hindu with Neem Karoli Baba, and you come from a Buddhist background. Can you share a little bit about your background and the similarities or differences between the meditation techniques?
Well, I'll do a tiny biographical moment, and maybe that will give some context. I was doing pre-med in an Ivy League university, and I went from my organic chemistry class into a classroom where an old professor from Harvard, Wing-Sit Chan, this wonderful old Chinese gentleman, sometimes even sat cross-legged on the desk and talked about the Buddha and said the Buddhist teachings, which are not a religion for someone, but they're really teachings of how to live wisely, talk about talk about suffering, that human life has suffering. It has all kinds of things. It has joy and sorrow, but it has suffering. And it talks about the causes and a path to release that suffering, to be free in the midst of praise and blame and gain and loss and all of the things that change, pleasure and pain. And when this wonderful professor said that, I stopped, because I'd come from a family of a lot of pain. My father was violent. He was a wife batterer. He was a abusive man and had mental problems. And I carried a lot of that pain. And the minute I heard that there's practices that acknowledge that we have suffering in our life, and there are ways then to turn that suffering into a peaceful heart, to turn mindful attention and loving awareness to acknowledge the pain and to not get caught in it, but hold it in a very different way. I leaned forward and I said, I need to learn this. I need to learn this more than organic chemistry. I need to learn how to deal with my own emotions. That wasn't part of the curriculum, how to deal with my fear and anger and anxiety. I need to learn also how to deal with my own body. This is the curriculum that we need as human beings. So I thought, okay, Ivy League's good. I went and became a Buddhist monk.
Wait, that you went too quick there. Wait, you went from the Ivy League to how did you become a Buddhist monk in the States?
No, what I did, it was in the 1960s, is I looked around and I said, how can I go to a Buddhist country where I find a teacher that will help me learn forgiveness, that will help me learn compassion, that will help me learn how to deal with the trauma of my history, that will help me take care of, this human life. And so I signed up for the Peace Corps. And I said, send me to a Buddhist country. I'll go do anything there. So I got sent to Thailand, and I was put on village medical teams in the Mekong River Valley because I had a little bit of training in that way. And I started to look for a teacher. And I found a very wise, wonderful man named Ajahn Chah. And I asked, can I come and study with you? And he said, well, you'd have to be a monk. I said, I'd be quite happy to spend some time as a Buddhist monk. Tell me what I have to do. So I did that, and I found myself in the 1960s in this unusual position of living in a Buddhist monastery far away. And the training was trainings in forgiveness, trainings in compassion for myself and the struggles of everyone else around me, trainings in strength and steadiness. Because a lot of meditation, as people are listening, isn't so much to get to some particular state, but to learn that you can be present for your own life without so much reactivity. You can be present and steady and kind and gracious, even in the difficult parts of your life. And I have a poem, a kind of a poem I want to read that comes from a woman who was a meditation student and a friend of mine named Tamara Engel. And she wrote this in the last stages of her dealing with ovarian cancer. And she said, my days are short, and as I grow weaker, I experience so much gratitude for my meditation practice. And her meditation practice was sitting and being with all the things that came, and holding them with loving awareness and finding an inner peacefulness and steadiness. So she goes on. Not only the joy and ease that it brought so often, but also gratitude for the hard parts, for every bored and restless sitting, for every fearful fantasy. And if you have cancer, that's common, for every fearful fantasy, for every pain and ache I sat through, and every itch I didn't scratch. All was a training for kindness, a training for the muscle of bearing witness with loving awareness, a training for the trusting spirit that carries me now, even as I face my death. And it's both a poem of tenderness, but also tremendous courage that she had undertaken a meditation practice to steady herself in the fearful fantasies and the body pains and the longing and the love and the forgiveness, and all those would arise, and she would hold them all, feeling her body breathing, bringing in the quality of loving awareness. And that's what carried her even through the most difficult parts of the last stages of her life.
Well, that's beautiful. Now, as a monk, I would assume, how long were you a monk over in Thailand?
Well, I was a monk, and then I came back and I went back to be a monk again. So I was there about 5 years.
And then how difficult was that for you to change your entire lifestyle? How difficult was it becoming a monk?
Kat, I was a young man, right? I just out of college. I was in my early 20s. And you know how young men are. Is there anything dangerous to do around here? Let me try it. You want to prove yourself. So I looked around and I found one of the toughest monasteries you could find, like those old Zen stories with the masters you get in, get in. So it was physically demanding, and emotionally demanding more. What was hard was sitting with my own loneliness, sitting with the trauma I carried from my family, and realizing that I didn't have to carry that, but seeing it and feeling it instead of running away from it. And when I went into the monastery, the teacher there looked at me and he said, at one point, I hope you're not afraid to suffer. I said, what makes you say that? He said, there's two kinds of suffering: the kind that you run away from, that follows you everywhere, and the kind that you turn and face, with mindfulness and compassion that is the gateway to your freedom.
And I always love asking people, how'd that work for you?
It changed my life. It not only can I now, as I have, go into a hospital or sit with people who are going through pretty extreme difficulties, or my friends. And now that I'm 78, my peers are also, we're all watching our bodies change and gradually dissolve, whether it's this year or a decade later, it's what happens. But it gives me a kind of stability and peace of mind, having sat through all those things, as that poem from Tamara Engel said, of my own fear and loneliness. And I learned to acknowledge it. There's a simple practice of when fear arises, saying, "Oh, fear, I know you." Sadness comes. "Oh, grief. Yeah, thank you for care." Because we grieve because we care so much. Underneath grief is how much we cared. Forgiveness. "Oh, thank you. I felt so hurt. I can feel tender about that now." And feeling that tenderness, I can also let it go and be more free. Forgiveness doesn't mean that what happened is okay or that you don't stand up for yourself. It just means you don't continue to carry the pain of the past and recycle it in your heart over and over again. And so I
Beautiful.
learned those kind of tools, and that's what's worked for me. Now, it doesn't mean I can't have, oh, I wish my beloved Trudy were here, my wife. It doesn't mean that we have a perfect marriage and that I never get grouchy or irritable or things. Hallelujah, we're human. We have our conditioning. But even when we do, we can laugh and say, "Wow, that was a tough one, wasn't it?" And we both have that perspective. She also has trained in inner practices and meditation to look at each other with kindly eyes and say, "Yeah, today's a tough day, isn't it?" And that sweetness becomes the field within which everything happens.
And Jack, you talk a lot about open heart and sweetness, but you also talked about Tamara with that poem, Courage.
Yes.
Where did you get the courage to bring something from the East into this closed-minded West? How did you stir up the courage? To me, you're an entrepreneur at the toppest level.
Well, thank you for that. It's funny though, Pat, and I think you know it, and people who listen, it wasn't like some great deliberate thing. I'm going to start, this tradition or this company. I mean, I go to think about friends in Silicon Valley. They have an idea and they're going to make a company. It happened. I came back and I had been changed. And I looked around and I said, "This really helps me, but I need a language that I can even tell people about it." So I went back to graduate school to train in psychology. I got a PhD in psychology, clinical psychology. Partly I wanted to figure out what happened to me, but also I thought, these are beautiful practices for people. Let me learn. And then as I did, people said, "Would you tell us?" Because a lot of what I'd learned in clinical psychology was talk therapy, and we need to be able to tell our stories. We need to be able to listen to each other and be held by the heart of another. That's as much of a good, healthy spiritual practice as anything else, is that sense of community and communion. But then I realized, oh, here's how you do a loving kindness practice. You feel bad about yourself. You haven't done it right. You wish you'd gone earlier. You're in struggle with this person, but you also have to take care of them. Take some time, quiet down. Now try these phrases inside and repeat them. May I be safe. May I be protected. May I release the sufferings in my mind. May I carry myself with kindness or care. And you can change these phrases so they work for you. May I be well. And you do those and you repeat them. If you do it for 10 minutes or 20 minutes over and over every day for a bit, and pretty soon you start to notice that you're holding yourself with more kindness. And the thoughts come, you didn't do enough, and all the self judgment. And you can say, "Thank you. You're mindful of it. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. I'm okay. May I be safe. May I be kind in this moment. May I find a place of well being and not be caught up in these things. And as you recite and repeat, this is the beautiful gift that the mind and the heart can be trained. It's not an accident, but that what seeds we water, what seeds we plant, and what seeds we water are those that grow. If we water seeds of anger or fear over and over, they get stronger. But if we repeat and water in the heart seeds of self-care and respect for others, of presence and kindness, they start to grow. And the beautiful thing is, in the last 40 or 50 years, there have been 10,000 scientific studies on mindfulness and loving attention and so forth, published all over and done all over, everywhere from Stanford and Harvard and Johns Hopkins and so forth, that show that these trainings work. That if you practice, what you water and what you repeat begins to change the neural pathways. It begins to change how you move through the world.
I read In Love with the World by Mingyur Rinpoche, and I saw you on the back cover as a testimonial, and he describes that as gossiping between the neurons.
Yeah, and when you ask about courage, I'm pretty sure that everybody who's listening has courage. That it's not a singular thing. Sometimes just to get through the damn day is courage, actually. And then if you have a diagnosis or someone you love close to you has a cancer diagnosis, you step up in whatever ways you can. You might have some limitations, you might get scared, all those kind of things, but just to stick with it in your own way and braille, feel your way into how can I tend myself better in healing? How can I be with this person that I need to care for? That's tremendous courage. And so I feel both the tenderness and the humanity and the strength that we all have. And one of the things one of my Zen masters used to say, people would ask him, spiritual questions, and he would look back at us at certain moments and he'd say, you already have this. You already understand. You know this. And we support each other in our brave hearts. And even the days we're not so brave, we can be brave enough to say, well, I don't feel much courage today. Let me hold this with kindness, because we feel young, we feel scared, whatever it is. Let me hold that child that feels that way. And already it's its own act of tenderness and bravery.
You talked about the practice of loving kindness. You also teach a practice of compassion. Can you share with us what exactly is that?
Yes. So it's a beautiful question. The practice of loving kindness. And for people who are listening, we don't have time to actually train in the practices during this conversation very much. But if you go to my website, jackkornfield.com, there are a lot of free meditations. And you can click on loving kindness practice, and there will be the repetition of these phrases for yourself of self-love. May I care for myself as I am. May I love myself, my body, heart, and mind. May I care for others. May you be happy and safe, well-wishing. When love meets suffering, its valence turns, and that love, may you be happy and safe and well and held in love. In the face of suffering, that love turns into compassion. Compassion is described as the quivering of the heart when it's touched by the suffering of another person or by our own. There's something innate in us, if we haven't been so shut down by the slings and arrows of the world. And even then, it's deep in there. It may not be as accessible to start with. But if you see a child who's suffering, if you see an animal that's struggling, before anything else, there's this natural care that comes. And so this is the heart that says, we're in this together. When you play a violin, if you put a violin on a table and then you play another violin nearby, the strings and the violin and the table resonate. at the same time. It kind of plays itself softly. That's who we are. We're actually playing music with one another. And you know it very well. If you're in a room and you're angry, or someone comes in and they're angry, you feel it. Or they're frightened, you feel it. If you do some, whatever practice it is, walking in nature, listening to music that touches your heart, sacred music, doing a practice of loving kindness or compassion, where you see in your heart and mind's eye a person who's struggling, may you hold your suffering in compassion. May the great heart of kindness open in you with all that you're going through. Very simple wishes that you repeat. May you be held in tenderness over and over. May you hold yourself kindly and in compassion. And after a while, it starts to open the channel. And when you see that person or you're with them, the strings resonate and they feel, oh, this is someone who's not afraid of what I'm going through, who cares. Helen Keller said it beautifully. She said, this world, yes, is full of many kinds of suffering, and it's full of the overcoming of it.
Oh, beautiful. Jack, I follow you on Twitter, and I recommend all of our community do so. You'll get great words of wisdom and arrows that touch the heart. You had the mantra of compassion with a gorgeous graphic of a lotus, mane padme hum. But I've never heard it symbolized the way you said it. Do you remember what you said?
I don't remember exactly what I said, but
I do.
what did I say? Yeah, remind me.
You said compassion arises when the jewel of the mind rests in the lotus of the heart. And I went, whoa. Now I have you in front of me. Tell me, what do you mean by that?
So this is a famous mantra or an inner recitation, primarily from Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism. Om means the universal sound. Mani means jewel, and it speaks to the mind. Padma means lotus or heart. And so it's saying when the whole sense of who we are, our mind, if you will, I'm Jack, or I'm a human being, or I'm in conversation, when the mind that has a certain sense of ourself drops into the lotus of the heart, we become compassion. We realize, all right, we are part of this whole world. We're not separate. That there, you all know this, talking to all of you. We've all had these moments. Maybe it was listening to an extraordinary piece of music, or walking in the high mountains, or making love, or being there at the birth of a child, that incredible mystery, or sitting at the death of another human being, which is an equally profound mystery, when the spirit leaves the body as silently as a falling star, and you realize that it's not the physical body, but who we are is the consciousness itself. We have these amazing moments, or sacred medicine. You know this. And in those moments, you feel connected with the world. If you cut a tree, your arm would bleed, that it's part of you. You're part of life. That's a part of a poem from Alice Walker, and we all know this. We have these mysterious moments in a sacred temple, or in the grove of the redwoods, or lying there with a loved one. And this is what it means, that the jewel of the mind rests in the, compassion and the lotus of the heart. That we bring ourselves together in this moment. We are that great heart, and we are awareness itself. You're not your body. You rent your body. You get it from Havis or Hertz or somebody, whoever gave you an incarnation, and you have to take care of it. It's precious. It's beautiful. You sense things from it. You serve, you receive all of that. But it's not who you are. You were this tiny little body at one point, and then you're a teenage body, and your body's always changing. Every day you get 100 billion new red blood cells. It's never too late. It's always renewing itself in different ways, but it's not who you are. Who you are is the awareness that was born into your body, and that will also the consciousness that will leave it. And I remember telling my father that, in the last part of his life, because he was a scientist and he was quite frightened he was just going to turn into dirt. And I said, well, it's more likely. I've sat with so many people who are dying, and I've been in meditation, and I've had these out of the body experiences. I know I'm not my body. I said, so when it happens, you'll find yourself floating out of your body. There'll be a sense of lightness and ease, release from the pain, and so forth. And remember, when it happens, I told you so.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say I saw an interview with you and Oprah, and you talked about the spirit, the metaphor of looking in the mirror. Would you please share that? Because our cancer patients, the survivors, the caregivers, that was so powerful, Jack, to know that you're not the body, but the way you described it to Oprah, she went, aha.
Yeah, so it's super simple, Pat. Um, when we go into the bathroom and look in the mirror, one of the most common experiences that you will have when you go in is a kind of warped, like, I look older. I don't feel as old as that, or if you've been through some illness, um, that's not me. We all have that experience of uh, the body looks older, but we don't feel older, you know, and that's because who you are is not defined by time. Who you are is awareness itself. And so when you look in the mirror, you say, okay, how's this body doing today? Well, it's sagging, and it's got its wrinkles, and it's a used vehicle, if you will. And I don't feel that. I actually feel quite young. But that's where my body is, and I have to care for it and tend it. And you start to realize that who you are is the loving witness of it. That the body is something that's given to you as this incredible gift, and it has its sufferings, and it has its magnificent joys, and all the things that you get in human incarnation. But who you are is spirit, is consciousness having this human experience, saying, wow, this is amazing.
Now, I want to keep opening your tool bag because there's so many great techniques and tools that our community can use. You talked about the practice of loving kindness. You talked about the practice of compassion. I know another one of your tools is the practice of gratitude.
So, and in the Buddhist monastery, we would start every morning, just which you who are listening could do easily, taking 5 minutes. And even in this middle of going through really hard things, which we did there too, it was very cold in the winter, the food was sparse, or it was very, very hot in the hot season. And rainy season, everything got mildewed, and we had to get up at 3 in the morning and sit and not move for, a few hours together with it was quite intense. We'd start with gratitude for the new day, for the sunlight, gratitude that we're still here, gratitude that we know people that we love. And you start to look for things in your life that you can express gratitude for. And one of the sweetest practices is to have a gratitude buddy, to find someone that you care about and say, every day before I go to sleep, I'll text you one thing I'm grateful for. And they'll text you one thing. And all of a sudden, after 5 days or 10 days or a month, you start to realize, oh, I texted 30 things I'm grateful for. And the channel of gratitude and love starts to open. So that's a practice. Let me continue, since you're starting to talk about practices. On my website, you can go and click for free on a training called Mindfulness Daily. And it's a 15-minute a day course that goes on for a number of weeks, completely free, that gives instructions in how to bring loving, mindful awareness to your breath, to your body, to all the emotions you go through, the fears, the longing, the love, the hope, how to bring it to the mind that's very busy, and how to step out of the thoughts and become the loving awareness, how to bring it into your relationships, all the dimensions of mindfulness. 15 minutes a day with instructions free for anyone if you like that. It's a beautiful training. And then there's a whole training in forgiveness, because we get stuck in the past, and it's forgiving other people in ways, not that you don't stand up for yourself, but you don't keep recycling that, or that you ask forgiveness, because we also carry our own guilt and grief and shame. And it's not healthy for the body and heart to carry that too much. So, how to ask forgiveness for the things that we've done, even in our heart, even silently. You don't have to talk to someone, but there's an inner process of realizing that in the end, what matters is not the past, but can you be loving now? Can you let go and say, let's do a reset? Please forgive me for what happened. I was confused. We all have been. I didn't know all the consequences. I was caught up. Forgive me as I forgive you as best. I'm not going to carry hatred, because we discover that hatred never ends by hatred. You're watering the wrong seeds. But by love alone is hatred healed. By forgiveness alone are the things that we hold on to can get released, and we can be, in that sense, free to live with a compassionate and kind heart.
And these tools, this toolkit, Jack, that you use, and I know many, many people, not only at retreats and those who want to learn meditation, but you're at the bedside of numerous people who've had cancer or debilitating diseases. How do we get across to them that these tools, these techniques really do work?
Well, I think the first is, I'm just letting those who are listening hear the sincerity of your voice, because they work. You've dealt with your own illness, and they work for me, and they work when I sit at the bedside with people, because we live in a culture that's frightened of pain and frightened of illness, and we spin out in that way. Pain is part of being human, and it's fine to take, whatever pain medicine you need, especially if pain is strong. I'm all for you. I'm an all of the above person. Use what you can. But if with the pain, there's layered on top of it all kinds of fears. How long will it last? How will I stand it? I had it yesterday, tomorrow. We have all these stories, and the reactivity, it locks it in. There are simple practices of loving awareness for pain, for example, in which you can step back and hold the pain in kindness, not trying to fix it, because it's a signal from your body saying, pay attention to me, please. And as you learn this and you soften around the pain, it becomes workable in new ways. Pain medication helps more effectively. And that's just one example. These are very simple practices. And again, you could learn them for free in the 40-day mindfulness daily, or in lots of other beautiful sites of these kind of trainings.
Jack, you did something right there when you said solidifies, because it can start as pain, but I don't know if our audience knows the difference between pain, physical pain, and suffering. And that's really where your science of the mind takes hold. So would you please share with our audience what's the major difference?
This is an incredibly important question and observation, Pat. We will all have pain, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, joy and sorrow, fame and disrepute, night and day. That's the nature of human incarnation, is the play of the opposites. And nobody has a human life without joy and sorrow, without pain and pleasure. If we react to it, trying to only get pleasure and run away from pain, we spend our whole life in fear, afraid of what's difficult, running towards something else. So there's a tremendous amount of suffering in that. And there's also a tremendous amount of suffering just in our reaction to pain. Pain is pain, and when you pay attention closely, it is throbbing and needles and pinpricks. It actually is energy. It's a very powerful energy. If you bring kindness to it and soften, it gets less painful. But the thing is, you don't have to suffer in your mind and heart from the pain. You can acknowledge it. You can be the loving awareness. And as you are, then you begin to realize, as you said in your question, that there's this huge difference between pain, which is part of human experience, and all the ways that we create suffering from our fear and our contraction and our resistance. Those can dissolve with compassion and kindness. And we can be free, as I started in that poem, where Tamara said, I'm grateful for sitting through the itches and the pains and the loneliness and the fear and learning that I can be at peace in the middle of all of those.
So your techniques via your Buddhist training helps to alleviate the mental suffering. I read in A Path with a Heart, your book, which I loved, you even mentioned just now, if you go and embrace true physical pain, you talk about the layers, internal, external, emotional layers. Just touch on that, because I can only assume that many of our community have pain. Like, I had relatively little cancer in my body, although it did offer some kind of pain. And I didn't know what you talked about in this book that was so powerful in retrospect.
So there are a lot of levels to working with pain. And as I said, partly that it's natural, so it doesn't mean it's a mistake or that you did something wrong or that you should blame yourself or blame someone else. It's part of being human. Then the next level of working with pain is to be able to recognize it and to look deeply in it, because we use the word pain and then it frightens us. But if you actually begin to pay attention to it, it's always moving and changing, and it's got throbbing and needles and twisting and, fire and pinpricks. You get a little bit interested. And as you get interested, the space of awareness opens and it's less frightening. If it's chronic and it's there a lot, you don't want to pay attention to it for too long. You want to pay attention enough to realize I can handle it for a little while. And then it's fine. Then you distract yourself. You watch something on TV. You listen to a piece of music. It doesn't mean you're going to become the pain junkie, but you're not so afraid of it. And all of a sudden, as you do this, something shifts and you realize, I can be the loving witness of this body with its pleasures and its pains, not be so frightened, learn how to bear it somewhat without being lost in it. The other thing that I need to say is that we have so many fearful fantasies and ideas of what we should do. And I remember a woman who had advanced cancer. She had brain cancer and tumors in her body. And I brought her to this Burmese meditation master who was also a great healer. And he gave her certain special medicines and blessings and things like that. But all her doctors and famous, she went to talk to the doctors at Harvard and whatever, said, you have only a few weeks to live. And so she was quite frightened. And he looked at her and he said, you don't know that. He said, I want you to live as fully as you can every day. Take these herbs, do your loving kindness and compassion practice, shift from fear to a place of gratitude for the days that you have, and practice loving awareness and live it fully. And if you recognize on some day, okay, now I've turned the corner and my body's really letting go and moving to dying. Okay, do that consciously and kindly, but don't do it before you have to. Stay here and live with this life, live your love with other people, live the day. And damn, she lived some years after that. Everybody said you're a goner, and she wasn't. It doesn't mean it always happens that way, but the instruction was love yourself, tend this life while you can. Don't get so lost in the story. And then when you need to, when it turns toward dying, which will come to you, Pat, and me, Jack, and everyone, you'll know. But don't die before that. You don't have to. Live with love, live with courage, and don't be so afraid of the pain. Pain is just part of human experience.
When you donate to the American Cancer Society, your gift helps improve the lives of people with cancer and their families. Together, we can work to ensure everyone has an opportunity to prevent, detect, treat, and survive cancer. Visit cancer.org/donate and help make a difference.
There's one other tool I want you to pull out of your toolkit that I read in your book, Bringing Home the Dharma. And I just think it's an acronym that it's so powerful for all of us. It's so simple, yet so difficult. RAIN, RAIN, rain on that negative emotion, rain on that suffering. Please share with us your tool.
Yeah, this is soft rain, warm rain, healthy rain. It's an acronym of how to pay attention with loving awareness. First, you recognize, suppose you're sitting here, and you're filled with quite a lot of fear. And there'll be thoughts of what the future might be, and there'll be an emotion in the body and anxiety and fear. So the first thing is to recognize it, almost just to notice instead of being completely caught in your day just lost in it. Oh, fear, I know you. And this alone becomes liberating, because if you can recognize it, even if you get caught again after 10 or 20 or 30 times, fear, I know you, goes, oh, I can deal with this. So the first step in RAIN is just to recognize what's happening. Then the second is acceptance. Okay, I hate fear. I want it to go away. But when you don't accept it, what happens is it locks it in. You're in a struggle with the fear. And the fear is just an energy. So instead, okay, I recognize fear. You're here. I accept you. Almost like making about, okay, fear, you're showing up. You're trying to protect me, because that's what the fear is trying to do. Thank you for trying to protect me. I'm okay in this very moment. Thank you. You can relax. And so you accept that fear is there and that you feel it. You've seen it. Now, acceptance, RAIN, recognize, accept. I is to investigate. What is this fear? And it tells stories. I think it was Mark Twain who said, my life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. Right? So we have all these ideas, and fear is always about the future, what's going to come. What's now might be painful or pleasant, but fear is the whole story. So what is this fear? Well, it's a whole story. Is that story certain? Not necessarily. It's a story. What is fear like in the body? Well, there's a contraction and palms get sweaty and the breath stops. Let me just feel what it's like. And as you start to notice that fear is made up of story and contraction in the body and some emotions, you bring a kindness to it. And as you bring that loving awareness, it starts to lose its power over you. So you recognize, you accept, you discover, oh, it's these kind of energies, stories, contractions, and so forth, held with kindness, RAIN. And then the last part is nurturing, not identifying with it, this is who I am, but instead saying, oh, let this rain bring the nurturance of kindness and awareness and compassion. Instead of fear, let me live this moment in trust. And trust becomes the coin of the realm, as it said, because in fact, we live with trust. This body is breathing itself, and we can trust it to breathe when we go to sleep. It will do it. It's digesting food. It's making 100 billion new blood cells and creating a new stomach lining and giving you new eyebrows every few weeks. And it knows what it's doing, even when it's sick, even when you're getting close to dying. It still knows how to run itself. And the universe knows how to run itself. It has air for you to breathe and water for you to drink and all of these things. And so there comes a nurturance afterward. All right, here's fear and anxiety. How do I nurture myself? I hold this with kindness. I recognize it. I accept it. I see all its parts. And now I put on some beautiful music. I bring some compassion for this body. I realize I can take it a day at a time. I don't have to live so much in the fantasies of the future. I can actually be where I am. And in that process of recognizing, accepting, investigating or discovering, and then nurturing. It's a gateway to a freedom. And this practice of rain, my good friend Tara Brach, who's a colleague, if you look on her website, tarabrach.com, there's all these beautiful free meditations of how to do rain and have it guided for you.
Jack, that was beautiful. What a wonderful, wonderful tool that anyone can use, but especially our cancer community. Can you take us in that nurturing you gave your brother when his body suffered the fates of cancer?
Yes. So I was sitting with my twin brother who died a few years ago of blood cancer. I loved him very much, and he had a marrow transplant. He went through some years of treatment, and we were all there together. But at the very end of his life, he was not a meditator. He was an explorer and a university professor and a biologist and a scientist. So it wasn't time where I could teach him to meditate. He was already kind of out of it, and it was a little late to, begin your meditation practice. I said, well, let me practice with you, but I'm going to meditate out loud.
Wow.
So I closed my eyes and I said, I feel myself getting quiet. I sense a tenderness in my own body and heart because I'm sitting with my beloved twin, and I know you're near the end of your life. He actually died a few days later. So I feel all that tenderness and how much love and care there is. And I'm getting deeper and quieter and tuning. I said, this is weird. I said, but I feel ice in my groin, in my testicles. And I said, this is surprising. And then I asked myself, what is this? And I said, oh, this is death. This is the feeling. I'm resonating with you. And it's as if death is starting to come into my body a step at a time. I feel a warmth in my heart, but I realize as I tune in and I'm just present, first there's fear, but it starts to dissolve. And then there's a dissolving of the solidity. Things, I'm not quite who I thought I was. Things are changing. And I feel myself becoming the witness of it. At the same time, I feel my body beginning to shut down. And I said to my twin, I said, I'm not trying to do this, but we're connected as twins, like those two violins, and I'm just being present for what I feel. Do you feel any of this? And he said, oh, yeah, that's exactly how it's feeling for me because we tune in when we're close. And I said, now I'm noticing this whole field of love that we're wedded together, if you will, in our connection of the heart, in our care for each other. Do you feel that? He nodded. He couldn't say very much. I said, so let's rest in love. Let's rest in love.
Wow. Although it was late for your brother to start meditating.
Yes.
How about if we want our community to start? What would you recommend? And how would you recommend?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, the last day or two of your life, you can learn some things, and we did it together, so it was helpful.
I love
But
that.
it's so much more helpful to start earlier, and it's never too late. Whether you have a month left to live, you don't know. That's up to the gods, or fate or whatever it is. Destiny, karma, all those kind of words means you don't know. What you do know is you have today. You have this body and you have each other. Part of what makes it also beautiful is that we learn from each other. So what I would recommend again is that you experiment. You can go on my website or Tara Brach or Trudy Goodman, Sharon Salzberg, and there are all these free instructions of loving kindness practice, which is probably a good place to start, or simple mindfulness, the 40-day training, 15 minutes a day, of daily mindfulness daily. And you just try it. You find a quiet place. And in it, we describe, all right, you sit down and you notice your body's restless, or you notice that there's a sense of urgency. I have to get up and do things, or you notice that you're feeling a bit, upset by something, or you notice you're sleepy. And we tell you when you're sleepy, here's how to work with the sleepiness. how you can breathe a little bit, settle yourself, hold it with kindness. You're asleep because you're tired. It's fine. Don't judge it. Here's how to work with the restlessness. Acknowledge it, let it spread and open. Here are ways to work with your doubt, the doubting mind. I can't do this. It's too hard. I can't do the cancer. I can't help with this person. I can't. Instead, you recognize it and you say, oh, doubting mind. We all have the doubting mind. If you get in it, you suffer a lot. But if you simply acknowledge it, oh, this is the doubting mind, you become the loving witness to it. And there comes a sense of ease and freedom. So you practice. And that's it. You want to learn to play guitar or piano or computer code or tennis or things that you love and care about. You do it and you practice a bit, and then you learn you can do it. It's not that hard.
Jack, I love the way you keep going back to observe, notice, recognize, because from there you realize it's not you, whether it's
That's
fear
correct.
or anything. You're saying, I see you. I love that. I mean, you're
Yeah.
giving our community some taste of your own personal experience, and you're painting it in such vivid pictures that we can see. You can see fear coming. It's great.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you can take us right now through maybe a minute of meditation for, let's assume that our patient.
Sure. So this is a good way for us to end our time. So for people who are listening, first feel yourself seated in a stable way, your body on the earth. The earth is holding you. Your mother earth always holds you. Gravity, earth. And settle down so you feel some strength like a rooted tree. Here you are settled. And then if you're comfortable doing so, let your eyes close gently. Just tuning into the present. And take 2 long breaths. And notice then, let your body resume natural breathing, how it wants to breathe itself. You can feel it. And with each breath, add the word calm or ease, like a whisper in your mind. Calm or ease for the next 6 or 7 breaths. Calm and ease. And it's not trying to make anything special happen, but you're inviting in a sense of ease with each breath. And now you become the loving awareness. As the breath settles you down, notice what's happening in your body and your heart just now, whether there's tension or fear or longing or love or peace or worry. And with loving awareness, as if you could bow to it, just acknowledge what's present with kindness and compassion. This moment of your life, held in loving awareness, just as it is. And the breath keeps breathing in the background with ease. And gradually the mind quiets down a little bit. And the heart softens to hold it all with compassion, kindness. And you're present with loving awareness. And now, keeping that spirit of kindness and loving awareness, let your eyes open gently. And you had your experience of meditation and its invitation to you to continue to practice, to listen and find ways online that will help you train your heart to water the seeds of steadiness, compassion, tenderness, calm, courage. So thank you, Pat.
Oh, Jack, thank you. And I just want to reiterate to our community, as an afterthought, no one was suffering. You were not suffering in that present moment with Jack speaking, with your loving awareness placed wherever he said. And that's why it's so important. If you're doing meditation or want to start meditation, I highly recommend guided meditation. Go to jackkornfield.com and just investigate for yourself.
And then there's one more thing I want to add. We need each other in this. Here I'm teaching, and here, Pat, you're describing your experience and offering your wisdom. We can't do it alone. That we need community, we need to support each other. And one of the ways that you can find support that I'm involved in is a community called Cloud Sangha, Sangha, which is a Sanskrit word that means community, the cloud community. And if you go online to cloudsangha.co, to that site, or cloudsangha.co/open house, you can find these groups that you join with people where you meet once a week with a small group of people to talk about how you're practicing with compassion, forgiveness, mindfulness, what you're learning, and how you help each other. And it's a beautiful thing to do. So Cloud Sangha, Sangha, cloudsangha.co. And if you want to try it, //open house, and you get a little taste of what it means to get the support of others who are also learning to meditate together.
Jack, I'm loving awareness, and I love you. Thank you.
This is an honor, Pat. Really, there's a beauty in what you're trying to bring forth for the cancer community, for everybody who's going through in themselves and loved ones and so forth. But it's really what we need in the world. That at the moment, we don't need more oil and more food and more entertainment and more goods. And we need more care. We need more love. We need those gifts of the heart for one another. So thank you. My pleasure to be here.
And Jack, going back to your hippie days, I'm going to end with the sign that you know so well. Peace, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. Peace to you.
We're going to take a short break, and then I'll be joined by American Cancer Society CEO, Dr. Karen Knudsen, for this week's ACS Mission Moment. Stick around.
For people facing cancer, often what's standing between them and life-saving treatment is a ride to get there.
Thank you so much for picking me up.
Volunteer at cancer.org/drive to help save lives.
Welcome back to Mind, Body, Spirit Cancer. Here to provide a medical perspective on some of the topics from this week's episode is American Cancer Society CEO, Dr. Karen Knudsen. Welcome, Dr. K.
Hey there, Pat. So good to be back.
It's always great to have you with our ACS Mission Moment. And we just went through Jack's impressive list of meditation techniques from personal experience. I can say these will have a positive impact on your physical and mental well-being. As part of the medical community, what are your thoughts on meditation and other relaxation techniques?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Pat. And there's an increasing appreciation for a whole group of activities that we call integrative therapy or integrative medicine, and meditation belongs to that. Again, this is one of these examples where just anecdotally, it seemed like it was a good idea. But now through funding from the American Cancer Society and other entities like the National Institutes of Health, we have more data to show that things like meditation can truly help. So according to some of these studies, the practice of meditation can have major benefits for someone who has, a multitude of health issues, including cancer, including lowering blood pressure, reducing menopause symptoms, lessening anxiety, depression, and pain, which are all key, unfortunate side effects of cancer care, and relieving anxiety, stress, fatigue, and improving sleep even in cancer patients. So we, right, for example, right now at the ACS are trying to build on that data through research and are currently funding a study that will evaluate whether or not just meditation, but yoga can improve the lives of patients and caregivers, key components of survival for cancer patients.
Oh, that's beautiful. I know meditation has an impact, because if you can just let go of thoughts, let go of feelings, let go of any negativity, just let go and be, how can it not just be healthier?
You're a living example of that, Pat. And, something that I've increasingly learned as well from you. And I really appreciate your leadership in that area.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, Jack also briefly talked about how listening to music can help us open our hearts, that loving awareness he spoke about, and be more connected to the world around us. Isn't music also used to complement cancer treatments?
It is. And this is an area that has absolutely matured as a field. So, music therapy is considered a complementary method that can be used alongside cancer treatment to promote healing and to enhance quality of life. It gets especially recommended for cancer patients to reduce anxiety, to reduce stress, to reduce depression, and to adjust for mood disorders that can flare up during cancer treatment. It can also reduce blood pressure, improve coordination, and also benefit nervous and immune systems. So there's the mental effects that one might expect, but also biological effects on other parts of the body that we might not know all the answers to yet as to the why, but we do know that it works. So it's of note that many of the major cancer centers in the United States do offer music therapy as part of supportive care programs. This includes the Cancer Center and Cancer Program I used to run. And one of the things that I think is really remarkable is if you look across the nation right now, there are close to 8,000 trained music therapists working in the clinical setting in the US. 8,000, Pat.
Wow.
Pretty incredible, right? And so, these people have major roles to play in the lives of cancer patients and their caregivers. So data today, are certainly being built on by research, and we are a major part of that. So right now, for example, we have a grant that is looking at the feasibility of using storytelling through music to address grief. So, because there is grieving, unfortunately, that's part of the cancer process, grieving for the quality of life someone has, grieving for the process that they're having to go through. And so for both the patient and the caregiver, music can be something that is utilized, not just in the home, but even in the clinical setting to help heal.
Oh, I love hearing that. Music and meditation as a beautiful form of medicine.
And isn't it wonderful that it's something that even without, having all the data around it can be implemented on any given day by any patient, any caregiver to improve outcomes and also to just improve the quality of life and the experience that everyone is unfortunately going through as part of a cancer journey.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you once again, Dr. K. That's it for this week's episode of Mind, Body, Spirit Cancer, presented by the American Cancer Society. As our time together comes to an end, I would like to once again thank my guests, Jack Kornfield and Dr. Karen Knudsen, for joining us today. For more information on cancer research, advocacy, and patient support for your own or loved one's cancer journey, please visit us at cancer.org. Cancer.org. And don't forget to talk to your doctor about what screenings are right for you. I'm Pat Croce. Thanks for coming with us on this divine adventure. And be sure to follow, rate, and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. Peace.
The content of this episode is not intended as medical advice, nor should it replace the expertise of a medical cancer care team. Visit cancer.org for more information or call the American Cancer Society National Cancer Information Center at 1-800-227-2345 to speak with a trained cancer information specialist. Mind, Body, Spirit, Cancer is executive produced by the American Cancer Society in partnership with Pat Croce, with production services provided by Brand Live.